from there. Great game. 50 seconds to go. Hurts. Deep shot. Hauled in. Devontae.
Sure. And before the press conferences even start. I mean, we could talk for 45 minutes just about how atrocious the defense is.
He's just picking the big guys. Jordan Mailata, he's huge. He'll be good later on. Josh Sweat, he's tall as hell and strong. Let's get him. We'll figure him out. It's working.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to DSM Media, and welcome to Trending in the AM. We're live every single morning, as always, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. Make sure you share it out, like it, subscribe. We are on the road to 500 subscribers. Check this morning, we're up to 423. We gained 3 new subscribers last night. Small step. Tuesday's right around the corner. We got Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, 5 days. We get to 500 subscribers. The beard comes off first time in over a decade. Make sure you head over to YouTube, hit subscribe. Everybody doesn't want to see it. That's why this random joke is not taking off like I thought it would. We are brought to you on DSM Media and all of our shows on DSM Media by Manscaped, the leader in men's grooming products for goat and below the waist maintenance. Make sure you check them out, manscaped.com. Use promo code TRENDING, the name of the show, TRENDING. At checkout, it does 2 things. It gets you 20% off and free shipping. And secondly, it lets them know that DSM Media and Trending in the AM sent you to their site. So again, manscaped.com, promo code TRENDING at checkout. Got a jam-packed show this morning. We might only run about 40, 45 minutes. Unfortunately, we had a little issue with our guest today, Francisco Rojas from Last Out Media, from WIP, and from the Bell and the Birds podcast. He's actually going to be coming on Monday now. So we'll catch up with him on Monday and talk all things baseball and Philly sports with him. He's a great, young, bright mind in the sports media world. So we'll catch up with him. And I want to give a special shout out to my guest last night on DFS, no pun intended, Sia Najad. Guy is so great. What a gracious guest. He's super busy. He's involved in 4 or 5 different networks and podcasts. Came on, and he just brought such great energy to the show. So I just want to give him a little shout out. As always, this week, and next week, it seems like, too, my guest co-host is Jason Voorhees from the Sports and Metal and Drunk on Ice podcast. Jason, good morning.
Good morning, sir. How are you, man?
This lovely Friday morning.
I got to be honest with you, man. I'm in the camp that we need to get the subscriptions going, man, because I want to see that beard off.
Dude, I would basically look like you without the beard. An old
Pretty
man
much.
with no facial hair. Come on
We're
now.
the same age, brother.
Nah, you're even older than me. Come on now.
I'm actually a little older than you.
Yeah, anyway. Yeah, I have not been clean. Well, I was clean shaven completely for 2 weeks of my life. I went to private Catholic school, so you're not allowed to have facial hair in Catholic school. So I was clean shaven. The day I graduated high school was the last time I was completely clean shaven.
Wow.
Except for 2 weeks. I worked for Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I tried their management training program when I was like 22. It was the god-awful worst job ever I had in my life. I quit after 2 weeks, but they have a policy, no facial hair. So I shaved my facial hair, my goatee, everything for 2 weeks. And outside of that, so I was 22. I've had some form of facial hair since then. And I'll be 41 next week. So
yeah, I mean, the only way I know you is this bearded knowledge.
Yeah, so. I mean, I would even have to change my Twitter handle for a few days if I did this. So yeah, so 500. The road to 500 is here, and we actually have some other big things coming up at DSM Media. We're working on that promotional stuff this weekend to help grow the YouTube subscriptions even more. Only way you're going to win those prizes if you're subscribed. So make sure you subscribe. So anyway, Jason, today we're going to talk a couple different things. We're going to talk Sixers last night. Got blown out basically against the Jazz. We're going to talk the Steelers-Vikings game from last night because, it started out as a blowout and a clunker of a typical Thursday night football game. Then it kind of got exciting towards the end. And I got some interesting questions about it for you. We're going to talk a little bit about Eagles bye week and what we do on the bye week normally as Eagles fans. And then we're going to wrap the show up here. So last night, Sixers blown out by the Utah Jazz, 118-96. It was actually kind of close for the first portion of the game there. We were up 5 at the end of the first half. They kind of dominated us in the second quarter, which seems to be a trend for the Sixers. Really struggling in the second and third quarters, especially at the end of quarters. But then it just in the third quarter into the fourth quarter, it just got out of hand. There's lots of different things we can touch on here, but we touched on it yesterday. I believe it was yesterday or 2 days ago, where Joel Embiid, unfortunately, has to play hero ball. He has to play Bryce Harper, complete and total domination basketball, game in and game out with the current constructed roster, or this team doesn't have even a chance to win or stay in games. Last night, he did not have his best game. He struggled. He was going up against one of, if not the best big defenders in the NBA, Rudy Gobert. I think he's won the Defensive Player of the Year, 2 or 3 times in the last 3 or 4 years. And, I mean, Rudy Gobert, he's not big like Embiid, but he's such a great defender. And you saw Joel Embiid struggle a little bit with it. How do you feel? I mean, is that a concern that Joel Embiid, because of his health, has to play hero ball for the next 60 games for us to have a chance? Does that concern you?
I mean, it absolutely is concerning. I mean, that's why I believe yesterday we both agreed that I think they definitely got to make some moves here, because the problem is that basketball is a sport where, well, the new age of basketball, today's game, where, obviously, most of these teams have 2 to 3 elite level players.
Mm-hmm.
And, the upper echelon teams are generally the teams that succeed. It's not that the Sixers aren't or can't play good basketball and squeak into the playoffs, but the problem is exactly what you said. Right now, the supporting cast around him is not performing even near what they're capable of. I mean, we talked yesterday about Tobias Harris, like having maybe his worst year as a player. And
he had a bad game last night. He had 17 points on 6 of 11 shooting, which 6 of 11 shooting is fairly efficient. But in a game against the Jazz last night, he needed more than 11 shots. I mean, taking 11 shots is not good enough. Matisse Thybulle put up 8 shots. Shake Milton 7. He needs more than 11 shots in a game. I mean, he was a minus 16 last night, Tobias Harris. We lost by 18, 19, 22, and he was a minus 16. And he led the team in minutes. He played 35 minutes last night. That's just not good enough for Tobias Harris. And look, I'm a big Tobias Harris fan and supporter. I love the guy, first of all. He's one of the most genuine, nice guys there is. He's actually surprisingly a really good, quiet locker room leader and team leader. He loves taking the young players under his wing and grooming them and helping them become pros. But it's crazy to think where last year we were talking Tobias Harris getting robbed of an all-star game appearance. You take Ben Simmons out of the equation, and all of a sudden Tobias Harris is not an all-star performing player. And I know he's coming back from COVID, just like other players on this team. I know he's dealing with some nagging injuries. But is Ben Simmons really that important that it just totally took Tobias Harris's game and changed it completely? And, it's a real concern right now going forward because, again, more yesterday talk, on our show and then all day yesterday on Twitter that Tobias Harris, just like Ben Simmons, should be moved to rework around, Joel Embiid. And a game like last night shows he's a great third option, but he cannot be the second option on a title contending team. Tobias Harris would look great on a 500 team with no major expectations.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's kind of where he was. Well, they weren't really a good team, but before he got to the Sixers, I mean, when he came here, let's preface this by saying I always wanted the Sixers to go the route of keeping Jimmy Butler. And I know obviously it's easy to say hindsight is hindsight, but to me, Jimmy Butler was the piece that if you paired him with Embiid, now you're talking like, the two guys that, you have your scorer and you have Embiid. The problem was obviously with Brown and Ben Simmons and Butler, it just wasn't going to, all gel. But I think Tobias Harris, obviously we've seen he's capable of being that third guy.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. It's when he goes into the number 2 role where I don't think he has the talent to be a number 2. Mm-hmm. Like And B, I don't think he has. I don't want to say he's not confident, but he just seems to struggle when he's put in that position. Just like we were kind of talking about Maxey right now, struggling being a starter. You know,
he's back to the bench. Like I've been pining for Matisse Thybulle to start, but yet he's been back to the bench again because, again, like last night he played 19 minutes, okay? He put up 7 points. He had a couple nice plays. He shot 1 of 5 from 3. Now, there's 2 ways to look at Matisse last night. He had a bad game, no doubt about it. I'm hoping that even though he's young, that he actually gains confidence from last night. Because if you watch, I watched up to about 9 o'clock when I started my fantasy football show. I watched the whole game up to 9 o'clock last night, and he was taking shots with confidence. If you go back to last year when he had an open look for 3 or an open jumper or floater, he kind of hesitated a lot with his shot. And when you hesitate with your shot, it's the percentage of it going in is dropped significantly. So I love that he has that confidence now. I just hope that Doc Rivers, Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, they keep, keep shooting, keep going. You're gonna figure this out, and so that's a positive. But man, he needs to be better. I mean, you look at last night; they shot 18% from 3, 6 of 33. Joel Embiid, first of all, should not be taking 4 3-point shots in a game, in my opinion. I've said it for a long time. You had Danny Green 0 from deep. You had Shake Milton 0 for deep. You had Furkan Korkmaz 0 for deep. Isaiah Joe was 0-1. He did not get into mop-up garbage duty. And this comes back to Doc Rivers also. You see Furkan 0 for 5. You see Shake missing shots. You see Matisse 1 for 5. George Niang 1 of 4 from
I was
deep.
just going to say Niang was 1 of 4.
Why not give Isaiah Joe some run? Because I know Joe is young. I know he's still developing, but he's shown the ability to knock down some shots. I really want Doc Rivers, and I want this of all my coaches in all leagues and in all sports, to see when stuff's not working and make that adjustment. It's okay to sit somebody down when they're struggling and give someone else, even if it's just an extra 5 minutes. You could have put in that second quarter when we lost the second quarter by 12 points. We lost another 5 points in the third quarter. Somewhere in that second or third quarter, you could have ran Isaiah Joe out there for 5-6 minutes. See if he knocks down a couple shots. He knocks down 2 or 3 shots. All of a sudden, the game flips. All of a sudden, the energy picks up on the team. All of a sudden, the crowd at the Wells Fargo Center picks up. And maybe that pushes you into the fourth quarter into a comeback win. But he just kept running out the guys last night. And that's something that Doc Rivers is definitely, known for. He's going to stick to his, basic rotation regularly. It's almost predictable, his rotation.
Well, that's been my problem with Doc Rivers. I sometimes wonder if he is the right guy for the Sixers, like especially with Embiid.
Yeah,
like I don't know. When we brought him in here, obviously he's had a pretty good resume, but when it's all said and done, that he has the same kind of issue. Like, is he really holding these guys accountable? Remember, we talked about this, obviously, with Ben Simmons, but more so just with the entire Sixers team. Like, is he getting this team prepared for games? It just seems like there's always a lack of preparedness on this roster. And not just that, you hit on it, the in-game adjustments, knowing when to, sit a guy, or knowing when to, say, why don't I try this guy in this role? Like, obviously right now, they're going to be struggling as far as defense, because as much as I was wanting to move on from Ben Simmons, he's obviously one of the best defenders in the NBA. Like, that's not.
You look at if you watch any section of last night's game, and the Utah Jazz, they're a weird team. They don't have that, LeBron. Like, they have stars. They have Donovan Mitchell. They have Rudy Gobert. But they got guys like Bogdanovich and Joe Ingles and Jordan Clarkson, just straight gunners. And you saw last night where someone like a Ben Simmons on the perimeter guarding those guys could have helped. And then you got who we've got out there. You got Royce O'Neal. You got all these shooters. And Bogdanovich was actually 0-4 shooting from deep, which is completely unlike him. But these guys just gun and shoot nonstop. And someone like Donovan Mitchell, 22 points last night. You have Ben Simmons guarding him. That might be a different story last night. So I'm not trying to start a conversation saying should we keep Ben Simmons. That's not what I'm saying. But that's why it's imperative that a Ben Simmons trade happens where not only you get another score back, but you need, as everyone wants to talk about Portland, and Robert Covington is not what he used to be when he was with the Sixers defender-wise, but you need to upgrade Danny Green in the starting lineup as a perimeter defender. Because right now he's your best defensive player on the perimeter, especially with the starting unit. It's got to be improved. Or you got to find a way to make Matisse a better scorer, better scoring option, because it's a serious issue that this team lacks there on that perimeter defense.
I mean, you just nailed it. Like, we need Matisse to become that, because
we do. That is really the key.
He is he's capable of becoming that top tier defender. But
he is a top. I mean, I think he finished in the top 5 in Defensive Player of the Year as a reserve last year.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I meant was he's capable of being a top tier starter.
Okay, gotcha.
Defending, but if he's not able to provide any offense, then you're in the same boat. Like we just, I mean, I'm sorry. It's just it's so frustrating because we have high expectations for all these teams, and it just seems like everything is just kind of going off the rails as far as where we were 3 years ago with all these rosters.
Right.
I mean,
I will say 2 things about the Utah Jazz. First off, they're obviously a really good team. There's a reason why they're 18-7. They're a really good top tier team. One, I like the last couple of years. I always made fun of Rudy Gobert. I'm like, dude, he's not as good as Ben Simmons. Just that was my fan, my homerism coming out, and hoping that Ben Simmons. But when you watch Rudy Gobert play, because we don't watch him, as Sixers fans. Utah's a West Coast team. We don't see many Utah games unless you're staying up late watching those 10:30 start times. When he plays the Sixers, I thoroughly enjoy watching him play because I'm a defensive-minded guy. I love defense. That's where I made my bones playing basketball. I wasn't allowed to shoot. I grew up in an area where the white boy wasn't allowed to shoot the ball. He had to earn his points first. He had to play defense. He had to rebound. I love defensive basketball. The guy's really good. He just moves really well. He does things right. I am a fan of Rudy Gobert. I just won't say it during Sixers Jazz games. I'll say it afterwards.
All you have to do is go back and look at Joel Embiid's stat lines in the games where they play. Yeah. I mean,
you love to see when Joel gets into the other team's head, like how he had Andre Drummond, owned real estate in his head and all that stuff. But Rudy Gobert, there's 2 guys, Rudy Gobert and Al Horford, that know how to play against Joel Embiid and have always given him fits. And I'll just say Al Horford sucks, but Rudy Gobert is a really, really good defensive player.
Al Horford, what a fall from grace.
Rudy Gobert, there was a play last night, and I think it was the second quarter, where Joel had a fadeaway jumper from just inside the free throw line. And Joel Embiid is 7'2", and when you fall away, the distance between you and your opponent, and Rudy Gobert blocked the shot. And I was just like, that just like a light bulb went on. I'm like, yeah, that's good. Nobody blocks a Joel Embiid fadeaway. It's impossible to block in. Well, I mean, you can come from behind and get it, but in front, you cannot stand in front of Joel Embiid and block a fadeaway shot. And he did. And that just like, yeah, he's good. He times his jumps. He's got it there. So yeah. The other thing I want to say. Oh, sorry.
Well, no, I agree. I think a lot of times in these scenarios, we do have to give credit to the other team. Like, it's easy to just criticize the Sixers because that's who we're covering. But, kudos to, obviously, them for being able to limit Joel Embiid, who's had a few, stellar games in the last previous few. So,
yeah. The other thing I will end the Jazz topic on is the Jazz definitely lead the NBA in balding, unathletic white men that shoot the ball on their team. Bogdanovich and Joe Ingles are both 2 balding white dudes that can shoot the ball, and they look as unathletic as possible, but they're both really good players. So I just wanted to,
shout
throw that out there a little bit as I'm starting to thin out in the top here. Yeah. I just want to throw that out there. I thought that was a very important stat to throw out there, that they lead the NBA in balding white men that are unathletic.
Well, if we had a DSM men's league, I definitely would be probably the worst You would definitely have me coming off the bench because I definitely cannot shoot.
You'd be picked last, is what you're saying?
I would.
Yeah. I would be second to last, no doubt about it. Literally no chance. I've heard the stories of Scotty and Gint and some of these guys. I think at least they think they can ball. Whether they can or not, I'm not sure. But Scotty and Gint think they can ball. So, and then you got young guys like Jeremy and George that have the endurance of 18 and 20-year-old guys. So, our old asses would never make it, especially in a full court basketball game.
Absolutely not.
All right, so Sixers now, they got Golden State, on Saturday. It's going to be another tough game. Memphis, Miami, Brooklyn. We talked about this yesterday.
The stretch.
We said this stretch is extremely difficult. We're 14 and 12 now. We got 4 games, and after what we saw last night, I said yesterday morning, could they go 2 and 3? Well, Utah was one of the games I was hoping that they could win. And now you've got 4 more really difficult games. I find it hard to see them winning 2 of the next 4 games. Golden State, Memphis, Miami, and Brooklyn. There's a conceivable spot that they go 1 and 3 or even 0 and 4. And that puts you 0 and 4 puts you at 14 and 16. That drops you out of the playoff picture right now. Are Sixers fans okay? Is it okay to be concerned that we might go 0 and 4 in these next 4 games and have a 5-game losing streak?
Oh, I mean, I can't see Sixers fans, standing for it. Obviously, I think everybody is just waiting for the shoe to drop, waiting for this trade or something to happen.
But there's still 2 months before this trade has to happen. So we might be waiting a long time. I don't think we'll wait that long. I think by Christmas time it happens. But how long is too long to wait? Then you fall out of it, and then you have to jump all these teams to get back into it. We're falling, and there's a chance that we're going to fall fast here. In these next, what's next week or so here. So I am extremely concerned there. I don't know about you, but yeah.
I mean, I think, the team needs some kind of juice. Something has to happen around the team. Maybe they get a big win, and that kind of gives them confidence. I don't know.
Maybe.
But they have to do something has to happen. Joel Embiid, like we said, if he's asked to play hero ball every single day, I don't know if it's gonna work out.
And then he'll be worn out by that point.
Exactly. That's another concern. So
okay, all right. We'll see. We'll talk more Sixers next week, I am sure. I don't think they could beat Golden State on Saturday. So I'll call now the L now.
I'll say 1 and 3 the next 4. I
mean 1 and 3 is the best I can see. I can't see 2 and 2. I would not be surprised if they were 0 and 4 in the next 4 games, which would mean a 5-game losing streak, which would be your second 5-game plus losing streak this season. And that just means you're just not that great of a team. So, all right, let's talk real quick Thursday night football last night. Steelers almost pulled out the miraculous comeback against the Minnesota Vikings. It was 36-28. Vikings won, but the Vikings were up 29-0 at one point in the third quarter. So first off, I don't know how much of the game you watched or caught, but, can there be first off, we said it yesterday, the most mediocre Thursday night matchup, and it went just like that at first. The Vikings just blowing them out. The Vikings are just every single year a mediocre 500 borderline team with a quarterback in Kirk Cousins, which is there a quarterback that you can remember, a starting quarterback, so don't throw Chase Daniels out there, a starting quarterback that has been paid as much money and provided so much hollow stats. I mean, this guy throws for 300 yards, 3,000, 4,000 yards. I mean, he was coming in last night, he had 25 touchdowns with 3 interceptions. The guy is just mediocre, but yet he slings the ball. He puts up these blanketless stats, and he gets paid all the time. And last night was another example. You got somebody like Justin Jefferson. You got somebody like Dalvin Cook. And he almost lost that game.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. So you had the Steelers winning the game, and I had the Vikings, and neither of our scores were right. Obviously,
not even close. Neither of them were even close to right.
No,
really.
Because it was one of those 30.
Actually, I did. I said 28-20 Steelers. The Steelers did score 28, so I got half the score right. Just so you know.
Well, you did, but
that's 1 point. 1 point on my scorecard right there.
We'll have to start keeping track of these.
One score.
No, you're right about Kirk Cousins, but I on the other side of the spectrum, once again, look at all the weapons that he has. I mean, you're talking Dalvin Cook last night had his best game, maybe close to maybe a career game for Dalvin.
I mean, he's had several of those type of career games. I mean, and he's not even healthy. There was talk right up to game time that he wasn't playing. And he rushed 27 carries, 205 yards, 2 TDs. I mean, he almost ran for more than Kirk Cousins threw for yesterday.
And the funny thing is they don't miss a beat if Dalvin Cook is out because they have Madison, and Madison is almost just like a mirror image of Dalvin Cook. Like they're like
they use the word that you're handcuffed in fantasy football. You always draft a top guy's handcuff. You know, that's the ultimate handcuff right there.
Yeah, and then throwing obviously Justin Jefferson. I mean, I see so many people tweeting, can the Eagles please get over the fact that Howie nobody's going to ever get over it. The guy is a generational receiver. Like,
I'm trying to move on and not talk about that as much as possible.
I know.
But then you see him on a spotlight game where it's the only game on TV, and then it just keeps creeping into the back of your head over and over. And they were short Adam Thielen. Let's not forget that. But all year he's had Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook or Madison in the backfield. And yet Kirk Cousins is still just a mediocre quarterback. Let's be honest. He was the first player in the NFL to get a fully guaranteed contract a few years ago.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that he's a mediocre player. I think he is blessed with a lot of talent around him. But I don't think it's necessarily this year, especially his fault that they're losing. Because if you look at now, last night he did throw 2 picks. They won.
Yeah,
they almost blew it. But their defense to me has been honestly puzzling. Yeah. Because even the year that the Eagles played in 2017, when we played them in the NFC Championship, I went to that game, by the way.
Oh, that's awesome.
Absolutely awesome. Probably the best memory I have as an Eagles fan because I was there live in a game that they won. I remember going back to that game. A lot of people didn't have the Eagles winning, and the Vikings were at that time.
That Nick Foles, magic. Every single person thought that once Nick Foles had to be the starting quarterback, and those first couple games he played, he didn't light the ball, light the world on fire. It was literally he had 2 good games against the Vikings and then the Super Bowl against the Patriots, and that was it.
No, and you're right. But if you go back to that season, their defense was the strength of that team.
Absolutely.
Why I say it's puzzling is just so they lose that game, they get blown out by the Eagles. Then the following year, you have that. Isn't the following year the year that they had the miracle, like where the Saints, where they blew that, where that play, they gave up that play. Then I believe 2 years ago, they had another one where they collapsed. Like, it just seems like their defense is what realistically lets them down. I do think that Kirk Cousins is not, I don't consider him an upper echelon guy. I don't, like I said, because he has the weapons around him. I mean, I saw Kirk Cousins with Washington with basically nothing around him, and he had some good seasons. Now, obviously, they didn't make the playoffs, but I don't know if I would necessarily.
I was trying to think, and I was racking my brain here, and it just popped into my head. He's like the Jeff George from back in the 90s.
Okay,
he's a gunslinger that puts up stats. He's going to keep you in it. He's not going to lead you to a big playoff run, but he's also not going to lead you to a 2-14 season. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was trying to think of a guy now
13,
today.
14, 15, 16, that range there. And that's
I was trying to think of a guy today to compare him to, and I don't know any other guys of this.
Yeah. So on the other side of the spectrum, you have Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers. And Ben Roethlisberger, as bad as he looked at first in the game, and taking what you think of Ben Roethlisberger out of the equation, because as a person, that's a topic for an entire show. Ben Roethlisberger as a person. But Ben Roethlisberger as a quarterback, it was a topic in the last couple of weeks on a lot of sports shows that I watched, is that has last year and this year hurt Ben Roethlisberger's, career, his reputation and his, he's going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. There's no doubt about that. But has he hurt his legacy the last couple of years? And then last night, you watch him pull He got hit so many. He's got sacked 5 times. Some of those hits he took, again, insane. And this guy just keeps getting up over and over again for years now after all these hits. 300 yards passing again. He led that team back. And honestly, if Freemuth catches that touchdown in the end zone, at the end of the game, as time expires, we're talking a whole different ball game this morning. We're talking the Vikings loss that Kirk Cousins is even worse than we think he is. Ben Roethlisberger's this miracle. We're talking so many different things. So, Ben Roethlisberger said that this probably is his last year as a Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback. Did not say he's retired. He said as a Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback. I just like to throw that little tidbit out that no one wants to talk about. So he could go elsewhere. Doubtful. But should he retire? And has these last couple of years hurt his reputation? Or are games like last night proof that it's just been the team around him? It's been a lot of different circumstances around him, and that his legacy is still 110% intact.
Yeah, I'm not on the side that I feel that he's absolutely, tarnished his legacy. I mean, because if you look at it, he hasn't been healthy. And let's be real here. Not every quarterback, well, there's been none like Tom Brady. I mean,
right.
There is no quarterbacks that I can remember in time going back in history that obviously Tom Brady's playing at an elite level, best quarterback in the NFL at the age that he is.
He may win the MVP this year.
Remember guys like Joe Montana at the end of their years where they went to like Kansas City, and just guys like that their careers, like, it's not necessarily like they weren't tarnished, but they didn't perform to their elite level that Tom Brady is. And obviously the game is different today. I mean, you're not allowed to hit the quarterback. I mean, Tom Brady, to me, is a guy that has kind of benefited from having great offensive lines like his whole career. Like Ben Roethlisberger, let's face it, Pittsburgh's offensive line the last 3 years has been horrible. Absolutely garbage. Like, so I think you got to look at that when you kind of, have these discussions. I mean, he got sacked 5 times last night, and you said it. He got up every single time, and he is a gunslinger. Ben Roethlisberger, absolutely, to me, is a Hall of Famer. I mean, he's done a lot.
I don't even think you have to debate that. There's no doubt that, he'll make Hall of Fame.
But to your other question, I do think he just does need to retire. I think sometimes people get to the point where you have to realize, like, okay, I'm my body's, starting to fail me. I've been, especially in the NFL, because I mean, let's be real with it, obviously with the concussions and stuff. I'm sure he's been known to have had multiple, concussions. And I'm not I agree the personal side, like, a lot of people want to bash him for that. I try to just keep it to football. Like, as far as the football side of things, I absolutely love Ben Roethlisberger as what, the type of player that he is. I always thought that, to me, like, a lot of, people compared Carson Wentz to Ben Roethlisberger, like that kind of, gunslinger type quarterback where, it's kind of like, but, obviously a lot of people don't want to talk about Carson Wentz and the season that he's having, but you got to kind of look at it.
I have to disagree with this, Drew. You can't bench Big Ben. You just can't, because you're not going to throw out Mason Rudolph or whoever else they got back there. What's his name? The quarterback from Washington, Dwayne Haskins, on their roster somewhere. At least he was at one point. That's the problem with Big Ben. Big Ben has continued to play because the Steelers have done nothing to replace him. They haven't developed a quarterback. They haven't done anything to find that next guy. So that's why if Ben does retire this year, they're going to be a leading candidate for Russell Wilson, Jimmy Garoppolo, Aaron Rodgers, all these names that are going to be available this offseason. They're going to be one of the 8 teams that are all jumping to get this guy.
I was just going to say it's crazy, but I could see a scenario where Aaron Rodgers goes there. Like, I know a lot of people were saying Aaron Rodgers to Denver, but don't forget, Pittsburgh's got great receivers. And, like, the only thing that I think Rodgers would be missing there is the offensive line, and maybe Pittsburgh goes out and gets, a high draft pick or whatever. But they definitely got to shore up the offensive line. But they have they have the stud running back. I mean, they took Najee Harris, and I know his numbers aren't like eye-popping, but he is their Cal. There's literally nobody else besides Najee Harris. Like, they don't have like backup running backs that are really doing anything. If you look at their team, I mean, he's carrying the ball 20 times a game. Yeah. Literally exactly what we've been pining for Miles Sanders forever. And they have, Chase Claypool. I always loved him out of Notre Dame. He's a big-bodied wide receiver. You got James Washington. You got Deontay Johnson, who's really just come into his own. Talk about a guy that's underrated. Like, there's quite a few guys that were in his draft class ahead of him, and he's probably one of the better ones out of that class. And then you also had, who am I forgetting? You got Claypool, Deontay Johnson.
Washington.
Smith-Schuster, who's been out all year, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
You got great weapons there. They're definitely going to be in on a quarterback. So you're right. I don't see – they haven't drafted anybody, and I don't see them.
They're going to have no choice, especially if he does call it a career. But I could also see them, the front office, be like, please come back for one more year just because, they have no other options. Do you think Pittsburgh or Minnesota make the playoffs? They're both outside looking in Washington or not Washington, Minnesota, because of the win now leapfrogs the Eagles in the rankings right now because of strength of schedule and their division record. But there's just so many teams at that 6-7, 6-6 mark in both conferences. Do you think either of those teams are good enough to make that charge? Because, like, again, not only do you have to make a charge and win, but you got to beat other teams. You got to leapfrog other teams. I say the Vikings have a better chance, but because there's so many teams ahead of Pittsburgh right now, and I just don't think Pittsburgh, like all the reasons you just said about Pittsburgh, I think that'll catch up and they'll fall short.
Yeah, I agree. The Vikings, out of the two teams, the Vikings have a better shot, only because the conference is the NFC is a lot more closely.
Muddled.
Yeah, there's a lot of contending guys around the same, contending teams at the same record. So you got the Eagles, you got Washington, you got Vikings, you got the Niners. I mean, look at the West.
Right.
I mean, realistically, out of that division, Arizona is the only really lock, right? I mean, because you got Rams are struggling, and you got the Niners still in the conversation. So, and Seahawks, because obviously they just won, so that was kind of big for them. So I don't see. If you look in the AFC, it's more, you have, Patriots. Who am I missing? The Bills are struggling.
Yeah,
the Bills could
fall out of playoff contention. The Bills have a huge game on Sunday against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And they could easily lose that game as well, and they just continue to slide down as well. I could see a scenario where the Bills don't even make the playoffs.
I think they might not.
There's a really strong
way
chance
the Patriots are playing, and don't forget. I know I keep saying it, and people make fun of me, but don't underestimate Miami.
Yeah,
I'm telling you,
Brian Flores has a defense
team. Yeah. I predicted them before the season to make the playoffs. That was before they had even played. They did struggle mightily in the beginning of the year, but they are firing on all cylinders. And Tua, talk about a guy that's always kind of be linked to Jalen Hurts. Similar, obviously, same school.
Similar in the fact that they are always being talked about being replaced.
Exactly, but if you look at it, I think Tua is starting to show a little bit of growth as well. I mean, we talked about Hurts before. Obviously, that last game was his worst game as a pro. I don't think it can really just say, oh, well, Hurts regressed. I mean, sometimes people do just have a bad game. Let's face it. Great quarterbacks have bad games. So, everyone was like, oh, well, Hurts is doing well. And then all of a sudden they have one bad game, and that's like, oh, well, now we need Minshew. I mean, there's still so many people on this Minshew mania thing. And I keep saying, pump the brakes. I know I put out a tweet about, McNabb and Hurts, and I'm getting back. I got bashed for that because
hey, that's what we do. We get bashed. That's what we do.
Played in a different era. There's all these excuses everyone's making, but the only point I was making, there was one point of the tweet. that their starts to their career are similar as far as the numbers they put up and the way the team performed. Obviously, that year, the second year, McNabb actually made the playoffs because that team at the end of the year went on a run.
Mm-hmm.
But my point is I was just trying to say Jalen Hurts might not be the answer, but are you really ready to give up on a guy that you have at a cheap
I think we might start a new segment on this show. It's kind of like on whatever ESPN show it is. They bring up Ryan Clark's tweets. And what did you really mean when you tweeted this? I think we'll start a new segment next week. What did you really mean, Jason, when you tweeted this? I'm going to pay closer attention to your tweets. And next week, I'm sure we can find one tweet every day to talk about on your timeline.
I like that segment.
Real quick. It's bye week for the Eagles, right? You know, late in the year. I really normally hate late season buys. It's coming at the right time for the Eagles with the injuries and everything that's going on. I want to know what you do during bye weeks. Like, do you have something you do specifically? Do you use it to catch up on other things? Like, are you a fan of NFL bye? Like, what's your system as a big football fan and, you know, and stuff? Do you have a plan or like a tradition you do on bye weeks?
Well, obviously for me, I work a lot of Sundays, so I miss a lot of the games. I mean, I get to see sometimes if I work early, I'll see the late game, Eagles game. I'm talking, or if they play on Monday night and I'm available to watch it. But on a normal week, so my ritual would be obviously, if I'm available, I watch the Eagles. Yeah. But on the bye weeks, yes, I tend to kind of catch up on my knowledge as far as the rest of the league. So I'm like scouring the stat lines and then if I will watch hopefully whatever the televised games are
right
that aren't Eagles.
That's kind of when I was younger, I loved the bye week because the bye week was a chance for me to go to AC. Go out and party Saturday night, not have to wake up for the game or whatnot. But that was young, stupid me. Now old man me that could barely get out of bed every morning. I love the bye week because when the Eagles play, my attention is 100% on the Eagles. I'm prepping for post-game live. I'm tweeting out, live tweeting the game nonstop. When there's a bye week, I can literally move my laptop into my living room next to the TV. I can have the game on. I can have all my fantasy lineups up, checking them. And it's just a week to just enjoy the sport versus watching one game. So I love the bye week because it's just a week where there's, outside of fantasy and gambling perspective, it's just a week to enjoy the great game of football. And you don't have to worry about your team winning. And I just love, I wish I had 2 or 3 TVs because I'd have multiple games going on at the same time and whatnot. But even if I had multiple TVs during an Eagles game, they'd all be turned to the Eagles because I'm so zoned in on just what's going on with the Eagles. So bye week is a great week. I can't believe all the things I used to do when I was younger during the bye week and how I survived all those things. But bye week's a great week to rest and just watch and enjoy football as a fan of football.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't have said it better than you just did. Like that's the difference. Like when the Eagles are playing, whether obviously with, you're doing all these multiple shows and stuff, but even as just a fan that of people that aren't podcasters or aren't covering the team or whatever, that aren't like sports, dealing with like reporting or whatever, writers, they're still honed in on the game. Like, I mean, think about it. Like, even like before I, got into this, doing podcasts, like, I would be like locked in from like 7 a.m. when I wake up to the time the game was over, like on the Eagles. Like that was it.
Even back then, even after the game, because when you had the original post-game live crew with Ray Diddy and I'd watch that right through to the end. Derek Gunn and all that
whether
stuff.
They win or lose. Like you, if they win, you were happy. If they lose, you'd go through the pain. But you're right, and you'd rehash, in your mind, like, oh my God, the Eagles, like. Literally, that's how it is, really, the 16-game season. But you're right. The bye gives you 1 week to actually just relax and be you.
Pressureless football for 1 week. Yeah. No, I love it. All right. So we're going to wrap this show up early today. We both got busy days ahead of us. If you're in the area, in the Kennett Square area, stop by the pizza shop. I'll be there open to close today and tomorrow. Come check us out in Kennett Square, Fox's Pizza. I love to talk football with anybody, basketball, whatever you want to do, stop on by and I'll talk. But I want to end the show, unfortunately, on a sad note. We've got to bring up the sad news of Demaryius Thomas, 5-time Pro Bowler, Denver Broncos, wide receiver, unfortunately passed away yesterday at the young age of 33. It's always so sad to hear of a young player, a young person. He just retired. Unfortunate that he passed away. And I'm just going to go on a little memory of Demaryius Thomas. I liked him right away when he came out of college. I thought he had a lot of talent, big-bodied wide receiver, kind of like a T.O. clone to an extent. But I was a big Tim Tebow fan. He was – I loved Tim Tebow's ugly winning. I wanted Tim Tebow on the Eagles so bad. When he came for training camp one year, I was all ready to go buy a Tebow jersey so bad. I wanted him to make that team. But Tim Tebow did win one playoff game in his NFL career as a quarterback because of Demaryius Thomas catching an 8-yard slant pattern and running it 80 yards for a touchdown in overtime against the Pittsburgh Steelers, linked to the show today. So that's always going to be my favorite Demaryius Thomas memory. It's unfortunate. Passed away. They're saying preliminary reports he had a seizure in his home. I just hope, again, hopefully it wasn't because of, head injuries or anything like that. I'm not even speculating on all that. I'll wait till I hear more. But again, whenever you hear somebody, especially when you get older and you hear people that are younger than you passing away, it's always a sad thing. So I don't know, Jason, if you have anything to add to that.
I mean, if you haven't saw the play that Phil is referencing, I highly suggest you go back and watch it because although Demaryius Thomas was never a super fast wide receiver, I mean, you talked about him being a big body guy. On that play, if you watch it, he looks like a rocket.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, for me, Demaryius Thomas, I mean, I tweeted it out last night. To me, he's one of the most underrated wide receivers that we don't really talk about enough. Obviously, his career was shortened due to, obviously injuries and not being, fully healthy.
Let me give you a 4-year stretch of stats for Demaryius Thomas. We can actually go 5-year stretch with Denver here. So his third year in the league in 2012, he had 94 catches, 1,400-plus yards, 10 touchdowns. 2013, 92 catches, 1,400-plus yards, 14 touchdowns. 2014, 111 catches, 1,600 yards, and 11 touchdowns. And then the next year, 2015, another 105, 1,300 yards, 6 TDs, and then another 90 the next year. And then he dropped to 83 catches in 2017. I mean, that's a stretch of 5 straight years of 90-plus catches, over 1,000 yards each of those 5 years, and 35, 40, 45 touchdowns in a 4-year span. I mean,
I would have to do a deep dive
extremely underrated.
I would have to do a deep dive on that, but I'd be anxious to see where that is as far as how many other wide receivers have had that type of consistency.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that would be something for you to do.
A 5-year span.
A little research for you.
But
he went to the Pro Bowl 5 times in his career.
Definitely underrated.
Absolutely.
And definitely not talked about enough. And as you said, thoughts and prayers out to him, his family, and all his friends
absolutely.
And people that watched him, because we know how we are with players that we covet. Obviously, imagine being a Denver fan that watched him every week. I mean, thoughts go out to all the everybody, and
we're just going to go off the air with a quiet little moment for him, and then we'll see you guys back here next Monday. I'll be live from the mountains in Mifflinburg, PA, all next week for the shows. So, thoughts and prayers to Demaryius Thomas and his family.